They thought she was invisible. They thought she was just the help, a broke waitress in a cheap uniform who scrubbed tables for minimum wage. Julian Sterling, the Wall Street shark, was seconds away from closing the biggest con of the century, stealing $200 million from a royal sheikh right in the middle of a crowded Manhattan restaurant. He had the fake documents, the forged signatures, and the arrogant smile. But he made one fatal mistake. He didn't check the resume of the girl pouring his water. He didn't know that Sarah, the trembling waitress, wasn't just listening. She was reading the one thing he thought no one else in the room could understand. And when she opened her mouth, she didn't ask for a tip. She started a war. The air inside the Obsidian, Manhattan's most exclusive private dining club, smelled of old money. It was a scent composed of genuine leather, mahogany polish, and the faint metallic tang of chilled caviar. For Sarah Bennett, however, the air just smelled like fear. Sarah adjusted the collar of her starch-stiff uniform, trying to ignore the gnawing emptiness in her stomach. She hadn't eaten a real meal in 2 days. Her bank account balance was currently sitting at negative $40, and her landlord, a man named Kowalski, who had the empathy of a cinder block, had given her until midnight to come up with the remaining $600 for rent or find a cardboard box to sleep in. "Bennett!" The hiss came from the shadows near the kitchen swing doors. It was Calloway, the floor manager. Calloway was a man who believed that waitstaff were not human beings, but rather sentient furniture that occasionally required yelling at. Sarah hurried over, keeping her head down. "Yes, Mr. Calloway." "Table 4 is arriving in 5 minutes," Calloway whispered, his face flushed with the stress of catering to the 1%. "Do you know who reserved table 4? Sarah shook her head. "No, sir." "Julian Sterling." Calloway said the name like it was a holy scripture. "The CEO of Sterling Vanguard. He's bringing a guest, a VIP guest. If you drop so much as a spoon, Bennett, if you breathe too loudly, you're fired before the silverware hits the floor. Do you understand? I know you're desperate for this shift, but don't test me." "I understand, sir," Sarah said, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. "Invisible. I'll be invisible." "Good. Get the 1982 Waitress ready, and for God's sake, fix your hair." Sarah rushed to the service station. She caught her reflection in the polished brass of the espresso machine. She looked tired. At 26, she had the eyes of someone who had lived 3 lifetimes. No one at the Obsidian knew her story. To them, she was just Sarah, the quiet girl who picked up extra shifts and never complained. They didn't know about the life she had left behind. They didn't know that her father had been a high-ranking diplomat stationed in the Middle East for 20 years. They didn't know that Sarah had grown up running through the souks of Riyadh and the malls of Dubai, or that by the time she was 12, she could negotiate a rug price in 3 different dialects of Arabic. They didn't know she had been on track for a PhD in linguistics at Columbia before her father's sudden heart attack and the subsequent seizure of his assets due to a bureaucratic nightmare that left her and her sick mother with nothing. From diplomat's daughter to serving bread rolls in New York City, that was the twist fate had dealt her. She smoothed her hair and walked out onto the floor just as the heavy oak doors swung open. Julian Sterling entered first. He was a man who took up space. He wore a bespoke navy suit that probably cost more than Sarah's entire year of earnings. He had the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes, a predator's grin. He was on the phone, speaking loudly, asserting dominance over the room before he even sat down. "I don't care what the SEC says, Bradford," Sterling barked into his phone. "Just bury the paperwork until Monday. By then the wire will have cleared, and I'll be on a beach in the Maldives. Just get it done." He hung up and snapped his fingers in Sarah's direction, without looking at her. Water. Sparkling. No ice. And where is the sheikh? Right this way, Mr. Sterling, the hostess said, her voice trembling slightly. Behind Sterling walked a man who carried a different kind of power. He was dressed in a pristine white thobe and a dark bisht trimmed with gold thread. He was older, perhaps in his 60s, with a beard that was mostly grey. He walked with a cane, but he didn't lean on it. He carried it like a scepter. This was Sheikh Amir Al-Fayed. Sarah recognized him instantly from the news. He was royalty, a man who controlled sovereign wealth funds that could buy and sell entire countries. Sterling's demeanor changed instantly. The shark-like aggression vanished, replaced by an oily, desperate charm. "Your Highness," Sterling boomed, extending a hand. "So glad you could make it. Welcome to New York." Sheikh Amir took the hand politely, but briefly. "Mr. Sterling, you promised me a quiet dinner. This place, it is very loud. The best security in the city, Your Highness. Private, discreet. Please, sit." Sarah moved forward to pour the water. She was perfectly silent, a ghost in the machine. As she poured the sparkling water into Sterling's crystal glass, she saw him wink at his associate, a younger man named Trent, who was setting up a laptop on the table. It was a look of pure malice, a look that said, "We have him." Sarah backed away to the service station, her heart rate spiking. She needed this tip. If this bill was going to be in the thousands, the tip could save her apartment. She just needed to keep her head down, serve the wine, and ignore the pit in her stomach that told her something terrible was about to happen. The dinner service was a blur of courses. Truffle risotto, Wagyu beef, wine that cost $5,000 a bottle. Sarah and a waiter named David moved in a synchronized dance, clearing plates and refilling glasses. Throughout the meal, Julian Sterling never stopped talking. He was spinning a web, a complex narrative about Project Oasis. "It's not just an investment, Your Highness," Sterling said, leaning in, his eyes wide with feigned sincerity. "It's a legacy. We're talking about the largest desalination and green energy plant in the history of North Africa. We have the permits from the Moroccan government. We have the German engineering teams ready to break ground. All we are missing is the primary capital injection." The sheikh ate slowly, his face unreadable. $200 million is a significant injection, Mr. Sterling, even for my family. "High risk, high reward, surely," Trent, the associate, chimed in. "There is no risk," Sterling corrected quickly, shooting a glare at Trent. "That's the beauty of it. The bond is backed by the International Monetary Guarantee Corporation. It's foolproof. We deposit your funds into the escrow account tonight. The system verifies the liquidity, and by tomorrow morning, you own 40% of the infrastructure. The papers are right here." Sarah was refilling the sheikh's water glass when she heard the tone in Sterling's voice. It was a frequency she recognized. It was the sound of a lie. She had heard that tone before, years ago, when corrupt officials tried to bribe her father. It was a mixture of overconfidence and haste. "I have heard of this infrastructure," the sheikh said softly. His English was perfect, but heavily accented. "But my advisors in Riyadh were unable to find specifically the permit number you mentioned last week." Sterling laughed, a sharp, barking sound. "Of course they couldn't, because it's classified under the new trade agreement. That's why we're meeting here, face to face. I pulled strings to get the physical documents released from the embassy just for you. They aren't in the digital system yet. That's why this is an exclusive opportunity." Sterling snapped his fingers at Trent. "Show him the binder." Trent pulled a heavy, leather-bound folder from his briefcase and slid it across the table. "Look at the seals, Your Highness," Sterling urged. official stamps, the Ministry of Interior, the Royal Court of Morocco. And here, he flipped to the back, the translation of the guarantee clause. The Sheikh put on his reading glasses. He looked tired. He looked like a man who wanted to believe that people were good. "And this must be signed tonight?" the Sheikh asked. "The window closes at midnight, New York time," Sterling said, checking his heavy gold watch. "If the wire isn't initiated, the Germans pull out. They go to the Chinese investors instead. I'd hate to see you lose this to the Chinese, Your Highness." It was the classic pressure tactic. Urgency, exclusivity, loss aversion. Sarah stood by the wall, clutching a tray against her chest. She watched as the Sheikh opened the binder. The document on top was in English. It looked impressive. It had watermarks, gold foil stamps, and legal jargon that went on for pages. But underneath the English cover page, there was a document in Arabic. "We took the liberty of having the core guarantee translated into your native tongue, out of respect," Sterling said, his voice dripping with false humility. "We used a certified translator from the UN." The Sheikh nodded, appreciating the gesture. "Shukran," he murmured. He began to read the Arabic document. Sarah was only 3 feet away. She was supposed to be clearing the bread plates. As she reached for a butter knife, her eyes darted to the open page. The text was in Arabic script. To the untrained eye, like Sterling's and Trent's, it looked like standard legal Arabic. It was beautiful, flowing calligraphy. But as Sarah's eyes scanned the first paragraph, her breath hitched in her throat. She froze. Her hand hovered over the table. The header didn't say sovereign investment guarantee. The word used was hiba, donation. And not just a donation. The phrasing was archaic, strange. It referenced laws from 1995 that had been repealed decades ago. But the most glaring error, the one that made Sarah's heart hammer against her ribs, was the stamp at the bottom. Sterling had pointed to it as the seal of the Ministry of Interior. But Sarah could read the fine, circular text inside the stamp. It didn't say Ministry of Interior. It was a stamp from a regional sanitation department in a rural province, likely a forgery bought off the black market or copied from a Google image search by someone who couldn't read Arabic. It was a sloppy, insulting fake. "Is everything all right, my dear?" Sarah jumped. The Sheikh was looking up at her. She had been staring at the document for too long. Sterling looked up, his eyes narrowing into slits. "What is she doing?" "Excuse me, can we get some privacy? You're hovering." I apologize, sir," Sarah stammered. She pulled her hand back. "Go," Sterling snapped. "Get us the dessert menu, and take your time coming back." Sarah retreated to the kitchen. Her mind was racing. He's going to sign it. The Sheikh was reading it, but he was skimming. He was an old man. Perhaps his eyesight wasn't what it used to be, or perhaps he trusted the English version more. He didn't notice the discrepancy in the stamp. He didn't see that the Arabic text actually absolved Sterling's company of all liability, classifying the $200 million as a non-refundable philanthropic gift rather than an investment. If he signed that, the money would be gone. Sterling would legally own it as a gift. The Sheikh would have no recourse. "Bennett!" Calloway barked from the pass. "Table 4 needs the check for the wine ready. And why do you look like you've seen a ghost?" "Mr. Calloway," Sarah whispered, grabbing his arm. "You have to stop them." Calloway looked at her like she had lost her mind. "Excuse me?" "The contract. The man at table 4. He's scamming the Sheikh. The documents are fake. I saw them." Calloway's face turned purple. "Have you lost your mind? That is Julian Sterling. He tips $500. Do you want to get sued for slander? Do you want to get us all fired?" "But I read it," Sarah pleaded. "The Arabic is wrong. It says, 'I don't care what you think you read,'" Calloway hissed, shoving a dessert menu into her hands. "You are a waitress. You carry plates. You do not read million-dollar contracts. Now get back out there. If you say one word to that table other than chocolate or vanilla, I will personally throw you out on the street. Do you hear me?" Sarah looked at the swinging doors. She looked at Calloway. She thought about her rent. She thought about her empty bank account. She thought about how easy it would be to just walk away, let the rich man lose his money, and keep her job. It wasn't her problem. The sheikh probably had billions. He wouldn't miss 200 million. But then she remembered her father. She remembered him telling her, honesty is the only currency that never devalues Sarah. She took the menus. Her hands were shaking. "I hear you," she said to Calloway. She walked back out onto the floor. Sterling had a pen in his hand. He was holding it out to the sheikh. "Just right here, Your Highness," Sterling was saying, "and then we can celebrate." The sheikh reached for the pen. Sarah approached the table. She wasn't just Sarah the waitress anymore. The adrenaline had unlocked the part of her brain that had been dormant since her father died. The part that was brave. She walked up to the table, but she didn't offer the menus. Instead, she picked up the water pitcher, leaned over the sheikh's shoulder, and spoke. But she didn't speak in English. "Ya Sahib al-Sumu," she said, her voice clear, resonant, and speaking in the flawless, aristocratic dialect of the Gulf royal courts. "La tuwake, al-wathika muzayafa." "Your Highness, do not sign. The document is a forgery." The silence that followed was louder than a gunshot. Julian Sterling froze. His pen hovered inches from the paper. He didn't speak Arabic. His arrogance led him to believe that English was the only language that mattered in business. But he understood tone. He understood the sudden, electric shift in the atmosphere. He saw the way the sheikh's eyes, previously clouded with fatigue and politeness, suddenly snapped into razor-sharp focus. "What did you say?" Sterling demanded, his voice dropping an octave. He looked at Sarah with a mixture of confusion and contempt. "What is this gibberish? Get away from the table." But the sheikh held up a hand. It was a commanding gesture, one that stopped Sterling mid-sentence. "Wait," Sheikh Amir said. He turned his chair slowly to face Sarah. He looked at her, not as a waitress, but as an anomaly. "Repeat what you said, child. And come closer." Sarah could feel the eyes of the entire room on her. Trent, the associate, had closed his laptop. Calloway was practically hyperventilating by the kitchen door, signaling for security. But Sarah was locked in. She had crossed the Rubicon. She took a breath and spoke again, switching to English so Sterling could understand the accusation, but keeping her eyes locked on the sheikh. "I said, Your Highness, that you should not sign. The document is a forgery. It is a trap." Sterling slammed his hand on the table, rattling the silverware. "This is outrageous. Calloway, get this lunatic out of here. She's drunk. She's clearly on something." Two busboys started moving toward the table, looking uncertain. "Sit down, Mr. Sterling," the sheikh roared. The volume was startling coming from the composed older man. Sterling sank back into his chair, stunned. The sheikh looked at Sarah. "You speak the dialect of the Hijaz? You speak it with the accent of the royal court. Who are you?" "I am just a waitress, Your Highness," Sarah said, her voice trembling but gaining strength. "But my father taught me to read before I could walk. And I know what that document says." She reached past Sterling, ignoring his snarl, and pointed a shaking finger at the Arabic text on the open page. "Look at line 4, paragraph 2, Sarah said. "Mr. Sterling told you this was a sovereign investment guarantee backed by the IMF. But the Arabic legal term used here is hiba gair mashruta. The sheikh squinted, reading the line she pointed to. His face went pale. Unconditional gift, the sheikh whispered. Exactly, Sarah continued, the adrenaline making her mind crystal clear. If you sign this, you aren't investing $200 million. You are gifting it to Sterling Vanguard Holdings as a charitable donation. There is no equity, no partnership, no German engineering firm. Once the money is wired, it is legally his, tax-free, and you have zero recourse to get it back. Sterling's face turned a violent shade of crimson. She's lying. She's uneducated trash. She doesn't know legal terminology. This is a standard boilerplate contract. And the stamp, Sarah cut him off, her voice rising. He told you it was the Ministry of Interior. She pointed to the faded purple ink at the bottom of the page. Look closely at the bottom rim of the circle, Your Highness. It doesn't say Wizarat al-Dakhiliya, Ministry of Interior. It says Baladiat al-Sarf al-Sahi. The sheikh leaned in, his nose almost touching the paper. He adjusted his glasses. He read the tiny, smudged text that Sterling had counted on him ignoring. The sheikh looked up. His eyes were wide with shock. Department of Sanitary Drainage, the sheikh translated softly. It is a stamp from a sewage plant. The silence that descended on table 4 was absolute. Sterling had tried to pass off a sewage department stamp as a government ministry seal, betting everything on the assumption that the stupid rich foreigner wouldn't bother to read the fine print in his own language, or that he would trust the English cover page. Sarah straightened up. He is trying to steal your money, sir. He thinks you are a fool. Sterling stood up so fast, his chair toppled backward with a crash. The mask of the charming businessman fell away completely, revealing the cornered animal underneath. You little witch, Sterling hissed. He lunged toward Sarah. Sarah flinched, stepping back, but the sheikh was faster than he looked. He slammed his heavy cane onto the table between Sterling and Sarah with a crack like a gunshot. Do not touch her, the sheikh said. His voice was low, terrifyingly calm. If you touch her, Mr. Sterling, my security detail outside will break every bone in your hand. Sterling looked around the restaurant. Other diners were staring. The illusion of his power was cracking. He needed to regain control. He adjusted his suit jacket, forcing a laugh that sounded manic. Your Highness, please, Sterling said, wiping sweat from his upper lip. This is a misunderstanding. A clerical error. My legal team must have attached the wrong draft. It's a placeholder. You can't possibly believe a waitress over the CEO of a billion-dollar hedge fund. Look at her. She's wearing a polyester apron. She's probably looking for a payout. I don't want your money, Sarah said quietly. I just didn't want to see a theft happen on my watch. Clerical error. The sheikh picked up the heavy binder. He felt the weight of it. You told me you personally retrieved these from the embassy. You told me the Germans were waiting. You lied to my face, Julian. It's a mistake! Sterling screamed, his veins bulging in his neck. Trent, tell him it's a mistake! Trent, the young associate, was already backing away, clutching his laptop case. I just did the PowerPoint, Julian. I didn't write the contracts. I don't know anything about this. You coward, Sterling spat. At that moment, Calloway arrived at the table, flanked by 2 large security guards employed by the Obsidian. But Calloway, in his infinite desire to please the highest bidder, misread the situation entirely. Mr. Sterling, I am so sorry, Calloway groveled. He turned on Sarah with fury in his eyes. Bennett, you are fired. Get out. Security, remove her immediately. She is harassing our VIP guests. No. The sheikh stood up, leaning heavily on his cane. She stays. Calloway blinked. Your Highness? This woman, the Sheikh said, gesturing to Sarah, is the only honest person in this entire establishment. If you remove her, I will buy this building and evict you by morning. Calloway's mouth opened and closed like a fish, but Sterling wasn't done. He was a man who had clawed his way to the top of Wall Street by destroying anyone in his path. He wasn't going to let a $200 million payday evaporate because of a waitress. He pulled out his phone. You want to play hardball? Sterling sneered, his eyes darting between the Sheikh and Sarah. Fine, I'm calling the police. The audacity of the move stunned everyone. Julian Sterling, the man caught red-handed committing fraud, was calling the police. On what grounds? Sarah asked, her voice shaking. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by the cold dread of reality. She was a nobody against a giant. Corporate espionage, Sterling said loudly, holding the phone to his ear so the room could hear. And attempted extortion. You solicited a bribe. You told me before dinner that if I didn't give you $5,000, you'd sabotage the deal. I have it recorded. That's a lie, Sarah cried out. I never spoke to you. My word against yours, sweetheart, Sterling whispered with a cruel smile. And I have the best lawyers in the city. By the time I'm done with you, you'll be in a cell for 5 years. He began speaking into the phone. Yes, 911. I'm at the Obsidian. I have a staff member here who is physically threatening a guest and attempting to extort a foreign dignitary. I need officers immediately. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. She looked at Calloway. The manager was looking at his shoes, refusing to make eye contact. He wasn't going to defend her. He was terrified of Sterling. The Sheikh watched Sterling with a look of profound disappointment. You dig your grave deeper, Julian. I'm protecting my reputation, Sterling snapped. He looked at Trent. Pack the bags. We're leaving. The deal is off. And you, Your Highness, you've just missed the opportunity of a lifetime because you listened to the help. Sterling grabbed the binder, the evidence, and tried to shove it into his briefcase. Leave the binder, the Sheikh commanded. It's my property, Sterling said, clutching it. It is evidence of a crime, the Sheikh said. It's my property, Sterling shouted, shoving past the Sheikh. The older man stumbled, his cane slipping on the polished floor. Hey! Sarah yelled. She didn't think, she reacted. She threw herself in Sterling's path. You pushed him. You can't leave with that. Sterling, fueled by rage and the collapse of his empire, backhanded her. It wasn't a slap. It was a closed-fist blow to her shoulder. Sarah cried out and fell back into the service station, knocking over a stack of porcelain plates. The crash was deafening. Get out of my way, Sterling roared. He marched toward the exit, Trent scrambling behind him like a frightened rat. Sarah lay on the floor, her shoulder throbbing. She looked up to see the Sheikh being helped into a chair by his own security detail, who had finally burst into the room from the lobby. They were large men in dark suits, scanning the room with professional menace. Stop him, the Sheikh shouted, pointing at the retreating figure of Sterling. But Sterling was already at the heavy oak doors. He pushed them open and ran straight into a wall of blue uniforms. The NYPD had arrived, but they weren't the beat cops Sterling had called. These were officers in tactical vests, accompanied by 2 men in plain suits with FBI windbreakers. Sterling skidded to a halt. Thank God, officers! That woman inside, she attacked me. I want to press charges. The lead FBI agent, a tall woman with stern eyes, stepped forward. She didn't look at Sarah. She looked directly at Julian Sterling. Julian Sterling, she asked. Yes, I am the victim here. I'm Special Agent Miller, FBI White Collar Crimes Division. We've been tracking your wire transfers for 6 months, Mr. Sterling. Sterling's face went white. What? We didn't have enough to move until tonight, Agent Miller said, stepping into the room. She looked over Sterling's shoulder at the Sheikh. We were monitoring the wire traffic. We saw the setup for the transfer to the Shell account in the Caymans, but we needed the physical contract to prove intent. She looked at the binder Sterling was clutching to his chest like a lifeline. Is that the contract? Miller asked. Sterling hugged the binder tighter. This is attorney-client privileged material. Not if it's an instrument of fraud, Miller said. She nodded to the officers. Seize it. 2 officers grabbed Sterling. He screamed, kicking and thrashing. You can't do this! Do you know who I am? I know the mayor. I play golf with the senator. Get your hands off me. They wrestled the binder from his grip. Agent Miller walked over to it, opened it, and flipped to the back page. She looked at the Arabic stamp. We have an interpreter on standby, Miller said. But judging by your reaction, I'm guessing the translation won't match the English. She looked up and saw Sarah, who was being helped to her feet by the Sheikh himself. Are you okay, miss? Miller asked. Sarah nodded, clutching her shoulder. I think so. Did he strike you? He did, the Sheikh answered for her. His voice was icy. I am Sheikh Amir al-Fayed. I witnessed the assault. I witnessed the fraud, and I will testify. Sterling was being cuffed. The metal clicked shut around his wrists. The sound echoed in the silent restaurant. You're making a mistake! Sterling howled as they dragged him out. It was her! It was the waitress! She set me up! His voice faded as the doors swung shut. The restaurant was dead silent. The other diners were stunned. Calloway looked like he was about to faint. Sarah stood there, her uniform dirty, her shoulder bruising, surrounded by shattered china. She felt small. The adrenaline crash was hitting her hard. She started to shake. The Sheikh walked over to her. He waved off his security guards. He stood in front of her, looking at her with a kind of intense curiosity. You saved me $200 million tonight, he said softly. I just read the paper, Sarah whispered. No, the Sheikh shook his head. You did more than that. You stood up when everyone else was bowing down. That is rare. That is royal. He reached into his robe pocket and pulled out a simple business card. It was black with gold lettering, no phone number, just a name and an emblem. My private jet leaves tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. for Riyadh, the Sheikh said. I am in need of a new advisor. Someone who can read the fine print. Someone who cannot be bought. Sarah looked at the card. Your Highness, I can't. I have a life here. I have my mother. Your mother is sick, is she not? The Sheikh asked gently. I saw the way you looked at the medical bill in your apron pocket earlier. I notice things too, Sarah. Sarah touched her pocket. The final notice for her mother's dialysis treatment was in there. I have the best doctors in the world in Riyadh, the Sheikh said. Bring her. We will take care of her. Sarah looked at Calloway. Calloway was glaring at her, mouthing the words, You're fired. She looked at the shattered plates. She looked at the empty table where the shark had sat. Sarah started to say. But before she could answer, the doors burst open again. It wasn't the police this time. It was a man in a sharp grey suit. He looked like a lawyer, but he had the eyes of a hitman. He walked straight to Calloway. Who authorized the arrest of Mr. Sterling? The man demanded. I don't know, Calloway stammered. The lawyer turned to Sarah. He didn't look at the Sheikh. He looked at Sarah with a gaze that made her blood run cold. You, the lawyer said. You're Sarah Bennett? Yes, she whispered. Mr. Sterling has associates who are very unhappy right now, the lawyer said calmly. You've caused a lot of trouble for very powerful people. If I were you, I wouldn't leave this building tonight. It was a threat, a clear, naked threat. Sterling might be in cuffs, but the machine he worked for, the syndicate behind the scam, was still very much active. And they were angry. The Sheikh stepped in front of Sarah. "She is under my protection," the Sheikh declared. The lawyer smirked. "Your protection ends at the embassy door, Your Highness. This is New York, and accidents happen in New York every day." The lawyer turned and walked out. Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. She wasn't just unemployed now. She was a target. The silence in the restaurant following the lawyer's departure was heavy, suffocating. It was the kind of silence that usually precedes a funeral. "Sarah," the Sheikh said, his voice cutting through the fog of her panic. "You cannot go home tonight." Sarah wrapped her arms around herself. She was still wearing her stained waitress apron. The smell of the spilled wine was nauseating. "I have to. My mother is there alone. If they know who I am—" "Precisely," the Sheikh said. He turned to the head of his security detail, a massive man named Barrett. "Barrett, we are changing the protocol. We are not going to the hotel. We are going to retrieve Miss Bennett's mother, and then we are going straight to Teterboro. Is the jet fueled?" "It's always fueled, Your Highness," Barrett said, his hand checking the earpiece. "But the flight plan isn't filed until tomorrow morning." "File it now," the Sheikh commanded. "Pay the fines. I want wheels up in 2 hours." Sarah felt a surge of resistance. "Wait, I can't just leave the country. I don't have a passport on me. I haven't packed." The Sheikh looked at her with eyes that had seen wars and coups. "Child, that man in the grey suit, Mr. Graves, he is a cleaner. He works for the syndicate that backs Sterling. Sterling was just the face. The money comes from people who do not tolerate witnesses. They threatened you in front of witnesses because they don't care about witnesses. They care about sending a message. If you go back to your apartment alone, you will never be seen again." Sarah looked at the door where Graves had exited. She thought of her mother, Martha, frail and sleeping in their small, drafty apartment in Queens. If Graves went there— "Okay," Sarah whispered. "Please, help my mother." The exit from the Obsidian was a military operation. Sarah was surrounded by 4 guards in a diamond formation. They ushered her into the back of a waiting armored SUV. The Sheikh sat opposite her, calm and immovable as a mountain. The drive to Queens was a blur of neon lights and rain. Sarah stared out the tinted window, watching the city she had lived in for 5 years streak by. It felt like she was watching a movie of someone else's life. When they pulled up to her building, a crumbling brick walk-up with a broken buzzer, Barrett spoke into his radio. "Hold the perimeter. 2 men with me." "I'm coming," Sarah said, reaching for the door handle. "Stay down," Barrett ordered sharply. "It's my mother," Sarah argued. "Let them secure the room first," the Sheikh said gently, placing a hand on her arm. "Please." They waited for 3 agonizing minutes. Sarah's phone buzzed. It was a text from her landlord, Kowalski. "Someone was here looking for you. Busted the door. I'm calling the cops." Sarah's blood froze. "They're already there." Barrett's voice crackled over the intercom. "Secure. The apartment is tossed, but the bedroom is safe. We have the mother. Bringing her down now." Sarah let out a sob she didn't know she was holding. A moment later, the front door of the building opened. Barrett and another guard were carrying Martha, who looked confused and frightened in her nightgown, wrapped in a blanket. They hurried her into the SUV. "Sarah," Martha asked, her voice weak. "What's happening? Who are these men? Look at the apartment. They tore the cushions." "It's okay, Mom," Sarah said, hugging her mother tight, burying her face in the familiar scent of lavender and medicine. "We're safe. We're leaving. Leaving? For where? Away from here, the Sheikh answered. Somewhere warm, madam, somewhere safe. As the SUV pulled away from the curb, a black sedan with no license plates peeled out from the alleyway across the street. "Tail!" the driver shouted. 6 o'clock! Sarah turned to look out the rear window. The black sedan was accelerating, closing the distance. "Is that them?" Sarah asked, her voice rising in pitch. "Barrett," the Sheikh said calmly. "Lose them." "Copy that." The driver slammed on the gas. The heavy armored SUV lurched forward, the engine roaring like a beast. They blew through a red light, swerving around a taxi. The black sedan followed, mimicking every move. "They're aggressive," Barrett noted, watching the monitors. "They're trying to pull alongside. They might try to run us off the road." They were on the on-ramp to the highway now, heading toward New Jersey and the airfield. The road was emptier here. The black sedan surged forward, its bumper clipping the rear fender of the SUV. The metal crunched, a jarring sound that made Martha scream. "Sarah!" Martha cried. "It's okay, Mom. Keep your head down." Sarah pressed her mother's head into her lap. Sarah looked at the Sheikh. He wasn't looking at the car behind them. He was looking at his phone, typing a message. "How are you so calm?" Sarah yelled. "They're going to kill us!" "They are trying to scare you," the Sheikh said without looking up. "If they wanted to kill us with a missile, we would be dead. They want to run us off the road to make it look like an accident. But they forget one thing." "What?" "I travel with the diplomatic status of a head of state." The Sheikh pressed send on his phone. Suddenly, lights flooded the highway from above. Blue and red lights, but not from a car. A helicopter swooped down low over the highway, its spotlight blinding the driver of the black sedan. It was an NYPD chopper. "I made a call to the police commissioner," the Sheikh said simply. "I told him a foreign dignitary was under attack on the Long Island Expressway." Behind them, 3 state trooper cruisers screamed onto the highway from the on-ramp, boxing in the black sedan. The sedan slammed on its brakes, fishtailing wildly before coming to a stop against the guardrail. The SUV didn't slow down. It sped on into the night, leaving the chaos behind. Sarah watched the flashing lights fade into the distance. She looked at the Sheikh. She realized then that she wasn't just dealing with a wealthy man. She was dealing with a force of nature. "We are almost to the airport," the Sheikh said. "Rest now. The hard part is just beginning." Teterboro Airport was a desolate landscape of concrete and floodlights. Private hangars loomed in the darkness, housing the toys of the ultra-rich. The SUV rolled onto the tarmac, bypassing the main terminal entirely. Ahead, a massive Gulfstream G650 sat waiting, its engines already whining with a high-pitched hum. The stairs were down. "Go," Barrett said as the car stopped. "Straight to the plane. Do not stop for anything." Sarah helped her mother out. The wind was cold, whipping Sarah's hair across her face. The smell of jet fuel was overpowering. They were halfway to the stairs when a fleet of 3 cars screeched onto the tarmac from the perimeter gate, blocking the path of the jet. "Hold!" Barrett shouted, pushing Sarah and Martha behind him. He drew his weapon. The other 3 guards did the same. The doors of the blocking cars opened. It wasn't the hitmen this time. It was Graves, the lawyer. And he had company. 2 uniformed Port Authority police officers and a man in a cheap suit holding a clipboard. Graves stepped forward, holding his hands up in a mock gesture of peace. He smiled, a shark-like grin under the harsh floodlights. "Going somewhere, Your Highness?" Graves called out. His voice carried over the wind. The Sheikh stepped forward, his cane clicking on the asphalt. "Move your vehicles, Mr. Graves. You are interfering with a diplomatic flight." "I'm afraid I can't do that," Graves said, reaching into his jacket. The guards tensed, fingers on triggers, but Graves only pulled out a folded piece of paper. "We have a warrant," Graves said. "A warrant?" The Sheikh scoffed. "For whom?" "For Sarah Bennett," Graves said, pointing a finger at Sarah. "Grand larceny, industrial espionage, and violation of a non-disclosure agreement." Sarah stepped out from behind Barrett. "What? I never signed an NDA. I didn't steal anything." "We have a witness, Mr. Sterling, who claims you stole a proprietary hard drive from his briefcase during the dinner service." Graves lied smoothly. "The officers here are authorized to detain you for questioning. It will likely take, I don't know, 48 hours to clear up. Maybe a week." It was a trap. If they took her into custody, she would disappear in the system. Or worse, she would have an accident in the holding cell. Graves didn't need a conviction. He just needed possession of her. The Port Authority officer stepped forward, looking uncomfortable. "Miss Bennett, we need you to come with us." "She is not going with you," the Sheikh said. "Sir," the officer said, "this is a valid warrant signed by a judge. If you interfere, we will have to detain you as well." Graves smirked. "He's right, Your Highness. You have diplomatic immunity, sure. But she doesn't. She's a U.S. citizen. She's subject to U.S. law. Hand her over, and you can fly away. Keep her, and this plane stays grounded." Sarah felt the walls closing in. She looked at her mother, who was shivering and terrified. She looked at the jet. Freedom, safety, a future. And then she looked at Graves, who was winning. She stepped forward. "If I go with you, will you let my mother go?" "Sarah, no," Martha cried. "Touching," Graves sneered. "But no deals. You come with us. The old lady can do what she wants." Sarah took a breath. She was about to surrender. She couldn't let the Sheikh get arrested for her. She was just a waitress. "Wait." The Sheikh's voice wasn't loud, but it stopped Sarah in her tracks. He turned to his assistant, who was standing by the plane stairs holding a briefcase. "Bring me the ledger." The assistant ran down the stairs and handed the Sheikh a thick book. "Mr. Graves," the Sheikh said, opening the book, "you are correct. Miss Bennett is a U.S. citizen. However, you seem to be unaware of the employment contract she signed." Graves frowned. "What are you talking about? She's a waitress?" "She was a waitress," the Sheikh corrected. "As of 9 p.m. this evening, she was appointed as the cultural attaché for the Royal House of Al Fayed. Her employment was backdated to the beginning of the fiscal quarter for administrative reasons." The Sheikh pulled a pen from his pocket, quickly scribbled something on a blank page in the ledger, and then ripped it out. He walked over to the Port Authority officer and handed him the paper. "This is a formal declaration of diplomatic status," the Sheikh said. "Under the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations, Article 29, a diplomatic agent shall not be liable to any form of arrest or detention. Her person is inviolable." Graves's smile vanished. "You can't do that. You can't just appoint a waitress as a diplomat on a tarmac." "I am a sovereign prince," the Sheikh said, his voice dropping to a growl. "I can appoint a stray cat as my prime minister, if I so choose. The paperwork will be filed with the State Department by the time we land in Riyadh. Until then, she is under the protection of my flag." The Sheikh pointed to the tail of the jet, where the royal crest was painted. "Officer," the Sheikh said to the cop, "if you arrest a foreign diplomat on sovereign soil without State Department clearance, you will be creating an international incident that will end your career before sunrise. Do you want to take that risk on the word of a lawyer representing a man currently in FBI custody for fraud?" The officer looked at the warrant. He looked at Graves. He looked at the Sheikh. "The warrant says, 'Waitress,'" the officer muttered. "If she's a diplomat, the warrant is invalid. due to incorrect identification. Exactly, the Sheikh said. This is bullshit, Graves shouted, losing his cool. Arrest her! He's lying! The officer handed the paper back to Graves. I'm not touching this, buddy. Call the State Department if you have a beef. I'm out. The officer turned and walked back to his cruiser. Graves stood there, furious, impotent. The wind howled around him. You're making a mistake, Graves hissed at the Sheikh. You're making powerful enemies. I have been making enemies since before you were born, the Sheikh replied, and I am still here. He turned to Sarah. Miss Bennett, your flight is waiting. Sarah felt her legs shaking, but she forced herself to move. She guided her mother up the stairs. The Sheikh followed them, pausing at the top of the stairs to look down at Graves one last time. Tell your masters, the Sheikh called out, that honesty is a currency, and you just went bankrupt. The heavy door of the Gulf Stream pulled shut and locked with a mechanical thud. Inside, the cabin was silent and warm. It smelled of leather and fresh orchids. Sarah sank into a plush seat, her whole body trembling as the adrenaline crashed. Buckle up, the pilot's voice came over the intercom. We are cleared for immediate departure. The engines roared to life. The plane began to move. Sarah looked out the window. She saw Graves standing on the tarmac, a small, shrinking figure in the dark. As the plane accelerated and lifted into the sky, leaving New York City and her old life behind, Sarah felt a hand on hers. It was her mother. Sarah, Martha whispered. Did you really get a job? Sarah looked at the Sheikh, who was settling into his seat across the aisle, opening a newspaper as if nothing had happened. I think I did, Mum, Sarah smiled, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. I think I did. The Gulf Stream touched down at King Khalid International Airport, just as the sun was breaking over the horizon, painting the desert sky in hues of violent orange and soft purple. It was a stark contrast to the grey, rain-slicked tarmac they had fled in New Jersey. Here, the air was dry and warm, smelling of dust and jasmine. Sarah stepped off the plane, her legs still feeling like jelly. She wasn't wearing her stained apron anymore. During the flight, a flight attendant had provided her with fresh clothes, a simple, elegant linen suit. Welcome home, Your Highness. A line of men in thobes greeted the Sheikh on the tarmac. They bowed their heads in respect. The Sheikh nodded to them, then gestured to Sarah and her mother. These are my guests. Treat them as family, and get Dr. Halim immediately. The mother needs dialysis and a full cardiac workup. At once, sir. Within minutes, Sarah was separated from the chaos of her old life by luxury she couldn't have imagined. Martha was whisked away in a private ambulance, not to a crowded ER waiting room, but to the King Faisal Specialist Hospital, one of the best medical facilities in the region. Sarah turned to the Sheikh. I don't know how to repay you. You already have, the Sheikh said, adjusting his gutra. You stopped a thief from entering my house. Now go. Rest. We have work to do tomorrow. The boardroom on the 40th floor of the Al Fayed Tower offered a panoramic view of Riyadh. Sarah sat at the right hand of Sheikh Amir. She wasn't serving the water anymore. She was reviewing the contracts. Her life had transformed. It wasn't just a handout. The Sheikh had meant what he said. He needed someone who understood the nuances of language, someone who could read the fine print that high-priced lawyers often ignored. Sarah's background in linguistics and her fluency in Arabic, combined with her Western perspective, made her a formidable asset in international negotiations. The German delegation is concerned about paragraph 14, Sarah said, tapping the tablet in front of her. They think the translation implies a delay penalty. Does it? The Sheikh asked. No, Sarah said confidently. The phrasing is takhir mutawakka, which implies expected delay due to force majeure, not negligence. I can clarify it with their legal team." "Do it," the Sheikh smiled. "You see? This is why you are here." The meeting adjourned, and the executives filed out. Sarah stayed behind to pack up her notes. "Sarah," the Sheikh said, "there is some news from New York. I thought you might want to see it." He slid a folded copy of the Wall Street Journal across the mahogany table. Sarah picked it up. Her heart skipped a beat when she saw the photo on the front page below the fold. It was a mugshot. Julian Sterling. But he didn't look like the master of the universe anymore. He looked gaunt, unshaven, and terrified. Headline: Hedge Fund Titan, sentenced to 15 years in massive fraud scheme. Sarah read the article. It was brutal. After the FBI seized the binder at the restaurant, the dominoes had fallen fast. The sanitation department stamp had been the smoking gun. It proved that Sterling hadn't just made a bad investment, he had actively forged documents to deceive a foreign investor. But it got worse for him. When Sterling realized he was facing jail time, he tried to cut a deal. He offered to give up the names of the syndicate, the dangerous people Mr. Graves represented. The article noted a grim detail. Sterling's plea deal was rejected after co-conspirators provided evidence that he was the mastermind behind the forgery. He has been ordered to pay restitution of $45 million and will serve his sentence in a maximum security federal facility. "And Mr. Graves?" Sarah asked, looking up. "Disbarred," the Sheikh said, "and currently under investigation for witness intimidation. It seems the syndicate decided to cut their losses. When rats are cornered, they eat each other." Sarah let out a long breath. The fear that had lived in the back of her mind, the fear of the man in the grey suit coming for her, finally evaporated. They were gone. The system they had abused had finally crushed them. "And there is one more thing," the Sheikh said. He handed her a thick envelope. "What is this?" "Your first bonus," the Sheikh said, "and the deed to the apartment in Queens. I had my agents purchase the building from your landlord, Mr. Kowalski." "You bought the building?" Sarah gasped. "I did, and I evicted Mr. Kowalski. He was a very unpleasant man. The building is yours. You can keep it, sell it, or rent it out. It is your security." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. She thought about the nights she had spent shivering in that apartment, wondering where the next meal would come from. She thought about the customers who had looked through her like she was glass. "Thank you," she whispered. "My mother?" Sarah asked. "She is waiting for you downstairs," the Sheikh said. "The doctors say she is in remission. She was asking if you wanted to go to the souk tonight. She wants to buy spices." Sarah stood up. She walked to the window and looked out at the Golden City. She was thousands of miles from home, but for the first time in her life, she felt found. She wasn't the invisible waitress anymore. She was Sarah Bennett, the woman who read the fine print, the woman who spoke truth to power, and the woman who won. "Tell her I'll be right down," Sarah said, smiling. "I know a place that sells the best saffron." She picked up her briefcase, walked out of the boardroom, and didn't look back. This story reminds us that integrity is the only currency that matters in the end. Julian Sterling had millions, power, and influence, but he lost everything because he underestimated the person pouring his water. Sarah had nothing but her honesty and her education, and it saved her life. It just goes to show, you never know who is listening, and you never know when one small act of bravery will change your destiny. Sarah could have stayed silent. She could have let the scam happen and kept her job, but she chose to speak up. What would you have done? Would you have risked your safety to save a stranger from a scam? Or would you have stayed quiet to protect yourself? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of instant karma and justice, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a new story. Thanks for watching.